Welcome to DocPro's channel. DocPro has all the documents you need at your fingertips. When it comes to commercial contracts, people often focus on potential profit rather than risks, obligations, or liabilities. However, whether you're a seller, service provider, or purchaser, you ought to pay attention to your potential liabilities, assessing their extent and limiting them wherever possible. The most direct way for parties to limit contractual liability is by number 1, excluding liability for certain types of loss through an exclusion of liability clause. Or number 2, putting a financial cap on liability for loss through a limitation of liability clause. Both these clauses seek to either limit or exclude a party's liability or the counterparty's rights or remedies. Some examples of this are financial limits on liabilities, exclusion of specific remedies like specific performance, exclusion of certain types of losses, an entire agreement and non-reliance clause, time limits on different claims, or force majeure clauses which exempt liability which arise from unforeseeable events. Warranties or indemnities are also a very common form of clause, often incorporated into different contracts. Several requirements must be satisfied for an exclusion clause or limitation of liability clause to be effective. Number 1, the clause should be incorporated into the contract. It should also be clear and cover the liability in question. It should also be reasonable and not constitute a penalty. And finally, the clause should not be prohibited by law. We'll now be looking at each of the elements in turn. The clause can first be incorporated into a contract either by signature, by notice, or by custom. The liability in question should be clearly defined when drafting these clauses, which can be done by using clear terms which unequivocally cover the obligation or liability concerned. For example, instead of general wording to exclude any loss however caused, it would be helpful to use more specific terms, such as excluding any loss arising from willful intent or negligence. This is because a limitation of liability or exclusion clause may be unenforceable if it is found to be unreasonable. For example, if the liability caps are set too low or the exclusions are too broad in scope. The more reasonable, narrow, and realistic the clause, the more likely it is to be upheld by a court of law. Finally, clauses should also comply with the law. In many common law jurisdictions, there's consumer protection or unfair contract legislation in place which seeks to balance public policy with freedom of contract. Parties should therefore pay careful attention to these 4 considerations when drafting limitations of liability clauses. A well-drafted clause will enable both parties to balance their risks with the benefits of the contract. Anyhow, we hope this video helped you build an understanding of different ways to limit your liability in a contract. If you want to see more detailed examples, check out the link to our full blog in the description below. DocPro also offers different templates which can help you generate clauses which best suit your needs. Thank you for watching, and feel free to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful.